4:12 in the morning. Over the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, near the Yemeni coastline, a Houthi C-802 cruise missile bursts away from a mobile launcher and skims the surface of the sea, flying just 10 feet above the waves. Its path is set directly toward the side of an unprotected merchant ship. 5,000 feet above the water, an A-10 Warthog rolls into a sharp dive at 450 miles per hour. The pilot must cross the missile's flight path at a perfect 90-degree angle, timing the maneuver so both trajectories meet in the same point of sky. Beneath the wing, the AN/AAQ-28 Lightning Pod follows the heat signature from the missile's engine. At 4,000 feet, the GAU-8/A Avenger cannon opens up, sending a steady stream of 30mm rounds through the air, each one nearly the size of a glass soda bottle. The C-802 rushes straight into that barrier of metal. Its front section breaks apart, its fuel compartment is torn open, and the incoming threat disappears in a flash of debris. The cargo ship survives, but the moment of relief lasts only seconds. Along the coastal cliffs, 3 Houthi S-75 radar sites suddenly come fully online. Their systems lock onto the A-10. Then, 2 S-75 missiles launch from their rails and climb into the dark sky. The A-10 is flying low. It is moving slowly, and now it has become the target. The sky above the Bab el-Mandeb Strait turns bright white as the rocket boosters of the 2 S-75 missiles ignite. From the cliffs of Yemen, Houthi forces have set a layered trap. By forcing the A-10 down toward the water to intercept the first cruise missile, they have pulled the aircraft directly into the center of their engagement zone. The S-75 radar locks onto the A-10's frame. From the cliffside, the radar continues tracking the aircraft while the ground control system sends steering commands to the missile as it races through the air. Inside the cockpit, a sharp warning tone erupts. The pilot knows the aircraft is being tracked. To break the lock, the A-10 pulls into a hard 5G turn toward the waves. As it banks, it releases a cloud of chaff into the air. Thousands of tiny strips of aluminum and glass fiber spread outward, forming a wide reflective cloud that appears to the radar like another aircraft. That is the purpose, to give the missile more than one target and make it follow the wrong signal. But the Houthi forces are not relying on a single radar. 3 separate sensors placed on 3 different hills are watching the A-10 from different angles. The chaff hides the jet from one radar, but the other 2 still have a clear view. The first S-75 missile closes in at extreme speed. As it reaches the A-10, its proximity fuse activates, sending a powerful shock through the aircraft and causing serious damage. The A-10 systems begin to fail. The aircraft starts losing stability, performance, and maneuverability. While the pilot fights to regain control, the second S-75 missile continues to close the distance. Moments earlier, what appeared to be an ordinary civilian vessel had moved into the area. In reality, it was a camouflage ship operated by Houthi forces. Without warning, it activated an Iranian-supplied electronic warfare system. The jamming signal spread across the area, disrupting communications and data links for both the A-10 and the nearby cargo ship. But the main purpose of the jamming was not to protect the vessel. Its real role was to create a window for Houthi forces to launch a second C-802 cruise missile from a coastal position roughly 3 miles away. At the same time, the camouflage ship revealed its own hidden weapons. A ZU-23-2 anti-aircraft system opened up on the A-10, adding even more pressure to an aircraft that was already fighting to stay in the air. The jet was now being challenged from both directions at once. With the data link disrupted, the A-10 shifted to the AN/AAQ-28 Lightning Pod, relying on its infrared sensor to track the surrounding threats. Through that system, the crew was able to follow the heat signature and projected path of the incoming C-802 missile, keeping a clear picture of the battlefield even as communications struggled. Then 6 fast attack boats surged out from a nearby cove, timing their move with the approaching missile. The pilot had almost no countermeasures left, ammunition was running low, and the aircraft was becoming harder to control by the second. There were only 3 choices: stop the missile, stop the boats, or somehow survive the second S-75. That was the moment the A-10 made a move the Houthi forces had not expected. Instead of turning away, it accelerated and dove straight toward the disguised fishing vessel, cutting through the heavy fire from the ZU-23-2 position. At a distance of 900 meters, or roughly 3,000 feet, the pilot focused on the closest and most urgent threat. A brief burst from the A-10 was enough to disable the vessel's key systems. Its electronic warfare equipment stopped transmitting, allowing both the A-10 and the cargo ship to begin restoring communications and target tracking. But that was only one layer of the Houthi plan. The moment the jamming system went silent, the shore-based forces moved into the next phase. Two uncrewed high-speed attack boats that had been waiting near the shipping lane suddenly came to life. They accelerated toward the cargo ship, attempting to arrive in coordination with the incoming missile. The damaged A-10 could barely remain airborne as both the second C-802 and the S-75 continued closing in. Using every bit of control still available, the pilot forced the aircraft into one final evasive dive while engaging the boats below. The constant shifts in altitude and direction made the final approach far more difficult for the S-75 guidance system. Instead of connecting with the aircraft, the missile passed by the A-10 and lost its chance to reach the target. But the danger was not over. On the display of the AN/AAQ-28 Lightning Pod, another group appeared. About 20 small one-use UAVs launched from the coastal area. They quickly spread out in different directions, forming a new wave intended to overload the defenses of both the A-10 and the cargo ship. At that same moment, the MV Hope stopped hiding its true purpose. A phalanx CIWS system came online directly on the ship's deck. In an instant, the MV Hope revealed itself not as a helpless merchant vessel, but as a U.S. Navy decoy ship. The phalanx immediately began tracking and engaging the boats and drones. Its sudden activation dramatically reduced the pressure from the close-range threats, giving the A-10 and the cargo ship the narrow opening they needed. However, the system was built for close-range protection, and it did not have the reach needed to stop the C-802 cruise missile, which continued moving toward its target. At this point, every decision had to be made within mere tens of seconds. The A-10 was still flying, even after taking heavy damage from repeated waves of pressure. At the same time, its systems had to keep track of the C-802, the remaining one-way UAVs, and everything happening around the MV Hope. To protect the ship, the commander had to make a decision almost instantly before the missile entered its final approach window. Then a salvo of BM-30 Smerch rockets came from a coastal position. In a short span of time, multiple rockets were sent toward the area around the MV Hope and the A-10, creating a long-range saturation wave from the shore. Meanwhile, the ship's phalanx CIWS kept focusing on close-range threats, including fast attack boats and UAVs. That left it with very limited room to respond to the rocket barrage coming from the coastline. Data from the AN/AAQ-28 Lightning Pod quickly revealed the origin point of the rocket fire. The BM-30 Smerch battery was positioned inside a reinforced coastal emplacement, built to support several salvos in a row. But the site had another layer of protection. An Iranian-supplied Tor-M 1 short-range air defense system was guarding the position. This point defense system was placed there to stop guided missiles and precision weapons before they could reach the battery. At that moment, the A-10 had only one AGM-65 Maverick left. As soon as the Maverick was released toward the battery, the Tor-M1 immediately shifted into intercept mode. Its fire control radar locked onto the incoming missile and prepared to respond, creating a direct contest between the A-10's last weapon and the air defense system protecting the BM-30 Smerch position. The AGM-65 Maverick separated from its mount and began flying toward the coastal rocket site. The Tor-M1 detected it almost immediately, switched fully into defensive mode, and sent a series of surface-to-air missiles to protect the area. Over the next few seconds, tracking, guidance, and interception all unfolded at the same time. The Maverick continued pressing toward its target, while the Tor-M1 constantly updated its fire control data in an attempt to stop it before impact. While the Tor-M1 focused on the incoming Maverick, the A-10 stayed low and continued moving closer to the coast. Its low-altitude flight path, combined with the complex terrain, forced the defense system to divide its attention between multiple threats. That reduced the reaction time of the air defense battery during the final moments of the engagement. In the end, the AGM-65 Maverick broke through the defensive layer and reached the BM-30 Smerch deployment area. The rocket launchers were disabled one after another, while the Tor-M1 system, the command post, and the support equipment around the site were also taken out of action. With the coastal battery disabled, the coordinated Houthi operation quickly began to collapse, easing the pressure on both the MV Hope and the A-10. The BM-30 Smerch barrage ended shortly after the launch site was taken out of action. The rockets that had already left their launchers no longer received coordination from the command system at the firing position, making the remaining strike far less effective before it could create more pressure on the MV Hope and the A-10. Within only a few minutes, no additional rocket launches were detected from Houthi positions around the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The A-10 continued its mission despite the heavy damage it had taken during the repeated waves of fire. One engine was no longer working, several onboard systems had been compromised, and the aircraft's maneuverability had been sharply reduced. Even so, the aircraft's reinforced structure and armored cockpit protection allowed it to stay airborne long enough to leave the immediate danger area. Once the situation was under control, the MV Hope finally revealed its real purpose. Camouflage structures on the deck were slowly uncovered, exposing military support equipment and an aircraft recovery area. What had appeared to be an ordinary civilian cargo ship was actually an afloat forward staging base, or AFSB, deployed to support U.S. Navy operations directly inside the operational zone. After completing its mission, the damaged A-10 approached the MV Hope with fuel nearly exhausted and many of its systems barely functioning. With help from the recovery equipment on deck, the jet carried out an emergency landing and was quickly moved into a secure area for technical inspection. Meanwhile, Houthi forces continued to believe that the earlier engagement had left the A-10 unable to continue operating. But once new reconnaissance images were updated, they discovered that the aircraft had successfully landed on the MV Hope and that the ship was still active in the Bab el-Mandeb area. The badly damaged aircraft had proven to be one of the most resilient platforms on the battlefield. Even after facing surface-to-air missiles, one-way drones, uncrewed fast attack boats, and several other layers of pressure, the A-10 remained capable of carrying out its mission until the final moments. In a modern battlefield where sensors, radar networks, and air defense systems are becoming more advanced every year, the ability to carry heavy ordnance, remain in the air for long periods, and continue operating after taking damage is still a capability that very few aircraft can match. But this engagement also raises a question that military planners cannot ignore. What would have happened if the Houthi forces had connected their entire defense structure into one unified network from the beginning, instead of using separate layers one after another? If the Tor-M1 BM-30, Smerch, C-802 missiles, one-way UAVs, and electronic warfare systems had been tightly coordinated within a single operational cycle, would the A-10 still have had enough time to locate the missile battery and release its final AGM-65 Maverick? And if the BM-30 Smerch battery had continued firing for just a few more minutes, would the MV Hope still have been able to protect the maritime route through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait? Or could even a small change in the Houthi defensive setup have been enough to shift the entire outcome? These questions remain open, and they show why modern conflicts are shaped not only by raw firepower, but by how well every system is connected, coordinated, and used across the entire battlefield.